Hi, you are watching SightsIn Plus and this is Romesh Shivastu. Please do subscribe the channel for the HR news, for HR updates and conversation the top-notch HR news. Today we are going to discuss about the centralized versus decentralized HR structure model. Today we will try to explore that how centralized and decentralized HR structure models influence the HR matrix and HR functions wise, which model is the best and what are the criteria to opt in any of these model, or we can also opt for the matrix HR structure model, or you can say hybrid HR structure model. To discuss in detail, we have two senior HR leaders. Let me introduce Ms. Seema Bangia. She is Vice President and Chief People Officer and Board of Director for the Aero and Defense Division of Mahindra and Mahindra. And Mr. Harjeet Khanduja. He is the Senior Vice President HR at Reliance Geo. So both of you belongs to big giants, multi-locational workforce and diverse workforce. So first, if we try to understand that what is the centralized HR structure and what is the decentralized HR structure, so that would be great, I think. Any of you would like to define that what is the centralized or decentralized HR structure?
Thank you very much, Ramesh. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you, Harjeet, for being my co-panelist today. And this topic is being discussed over many years. It's always been discussed. It's not a new topic, Ramesh, but still you picked it up. I'm sure you're looking at different ways of handling it or understanding it. So I'm just going to share my experience, and these views are my own personal views. I always worked over the last 30 plus years in a kind of centralized and decentralized kind of HR role. And what I have learned is business strategy is linked with HR strategy. So how is your business model? It is B2B, B2G, B2C. So business model, business context is always driving force for whether it is centralized HR or decentralized HR. And fortunately, I've been part of both, and I have seen the pros and cons of both. So for me, let's say if I'm handling a particular business model where customer experience or product, the services, what we are providing, that matters the most across my locations, then my some part of my HR has to be centralized, be it your strategy, be it your policy, framework, guideline, or anything with the going forward with the workforce strategy.
Harjeet, you have also written a book, how leaders decide, and of course the decisions drive the organization. That may be the HR decisions or any other business decisions. How do you see the pros and cons of this centralized and decentralized HR model?
And let me first start with defining centralized and decentralized, and I will define it in my own manner. So you would have seen a joint family and a nuclear family. So in joint family, all the decisions of the family are taken generally by the head of the family. And when you have nuclear family, then each member of the family has its own family, and they make their decisions how they want to raise their kids or how they want to live. Privacy is important. So when we talk about, say, centralized structure of HR, here the most important part is decision making is centralized. All the decisions are taken by a central agency. Then when you talk about responsibility and autonomy, most of the people in the centralized structure, they have limited autonomy. So when I'm saying limited autonomy, suppose you have 3 business units running within an organization. Now, if 3 different business units want to operate their business in different manner, then everyone will feel that pinch of that joint family, that I have to make some compromise. And another thing is, like, there are certain things which you want to do your way. You're not allowed to do your way because there is a way in which family runs. So when you are in a centralized structure, then you live with those constraints. When you are in a decentralized structure, then what you do is there are 3 divisions. All the 3 divisions run their own respective HR. If one leader wants to run it in a particular manner, they want to issue employment contracts in a different manner than the other business units, they are allowed to do that. They are able to do it. Now, when this happens, lot of you can say repetitive work happens in all the 3 divisions, which actually could have been combined. So that is the problem with decentralization, that you compromise on efficiency, but you give customization that I want to run my business in a particular manner. I am allowed to run my business in a particular manner. I want to create my employee experience. Suppose you are, if you look at business conglomerates, where they are into IT segment as well as into manufacturing segment. Say Wipro is one example of that. Now, employee experience for IT segment and the way you treat IT segment, that is going to be very different, and the kind of ER focus you want to have on your manufacturing segment, that is going to be very different. Now, in this case, whether you want to have a centralized structure or you want to have a decentralized structure, that okay, IT division, let them run the way they want to run, and manufacturing, let them run the way they want to run, or you want to have no, I will sit at the center and I will decide how the HR is going to run for these 2 divisions. Or you will say, okay, let me put a matrix structure, which is like a middle path, where you say, okay, policies I will decide, but employee experience, the way you want to create, you create the way you want it for IT employees, and you work on your ER the way you want to work on ER. So that's how these 3 structures operate. Centralized structure, decentralized structure, and the hybrid structure which you were discussing.
So, Seema, as you said that you would prefer to go for the hybrid or matrix kind of the HR structure model. So, okay, you are opting the matrix HR structure model. So, what the criteria you will pick that for which functions I can go for the centralized, and for which function we can go for the decentralized. So, what would be the criteria?
See, the criteria is again the decision making. I think Harjeet has said it, captured it very well. And again, it goes back to my business model. What kind of business model I'm working at? Now, I'll give you an example of my current organization, which is Aero and Defense. And as the name suggests, the decision making, because you deal with Ministry of Defense and sensitive customers. So decision making is centralized. So whereas when you create employee experiences at each location, we are multi-location, right? So we can't be everywhere. So it's more like a federal. You give them a guideline. Hey, this is our policy, and these are the things which we need to ensure. Besides that, you're free to customize it. I'm saying it policy, it could be process, it could be any employee experience, right? Because if you want to have everything centralized, we don't have time. I think resources are limited. And that's, if you go back a few years back, shared services concept came from the same, problem, where you have multi-location, you can't have HR heads at multi-location. So how do you create that pool of professionals sitting at one centralized place and giving advisory to the local HR spokes? So I think if you go back, it stems out from there. And that's where I've been used to working. And I think this is the best way of working so far. Even when the pandemic happened, the decision making to go for this, not to go for this, it was all centralized. And that's how we manage this pandemic. Of course, the local partners played a very, very vital role, but they needed some kind of direction in this kind of disruption, and that would come from the centralized team. So going back, I think for me, the hybrid model is the best model.
Harjeet, you also discussed what are the some criterias and what are the some there are, if you look at some, there's one SHRM survey, and according to this, around 60-70% of the organization, they are using the centralized HR structure, and 23% they are using both, that is a matrix kind of, and only 10% they are using the decentralized work HR structure. So there may be different survey. The figures may little vary, but the major part is, the important part is that most of the organization, they prefer the centralized HR structure. You can say 60%, 60 to 70% somewhere, and then comes the mix, then comes the decentralized. We are also talking about some personalization of the employees. We are also talking about every employee is an individual. Don't you think that decentralized work structure, that will be the good option for this?
Let me come to you quoted a survey that most of the organizations use decentralized survey. Now, if you see the which model you adopt depends on various factors. So one of the big factors is size, or the structure, or the culture, or the strategic objectives. These are the basically four key criteria based on which you pick which structure you want to follow. If you are into one single business and your size is large, maybe you would like to follow a centralized structure. Sorry, I missed it. If you are in one single business unit, if you are in one single business and your size is small, then you would like to go for a centralized structure because there is no need for too many HR people. But if your size is large, then what you will try to do is you would want consistency in the experience of people, but at the same time, you want prompt service. So you will go for hybrid. Decentralized structure you will adopt only when you have different business units with in different industries, and you want to give them say autonomy. Otherwise, you are not able to grow, and there is a need for giving autonomy. I will discuss that. So those kind of organizations are only 10%. So the survey which you are quoting, that is actually demographics of organizations, that what kind of organizations are there. It is not that this model is popular. This model is popular because that is how the organizations are. Now, coming on to why decentralized structure is required, or why somebody. So I was gardening one time and I was planting a small tree, a small plant. So my gardener told me, don't put the small plant under the big tree. So I said, why? Because this big tree will not allow it to survive. What you need to do is you need to put this plant in a gamla or something, in a pot, and let it grow. And after that, you put it in earth along with the big tree. Otherwise, this big tree will take all the nourishment and this guy will not even survive. Now, in these kind of cases where you are, say, acquiring companies and you want to run them independently, you will go for a decentralized structure. And you are saying you are independent, otherwise my way of working is going to kill your way of working. And your organization is not going to survive. That is one use case in which decentralized structure is used to the core. Wherever you are trying to build synergy, you will go for either hybrid or centralized, and that too will depend upon how many businesses you are juggling with. And look, when everything is together, there is a benefit of keeping everything together. Suppose you have taken a bijli ka connection or a electricity connection, and you have, say, a complex where 20 people are there. Now, you distribute the whatever bill comes, you distribute them, distribute it equally among all the 20 tenants. Now, everyone comes to you fighting that, okay, my bill is more but I am not consuming that much electricity. The other guy is consuming more electricity. So you have those kind of problems when you have centralized structure and too many people living in the same complex. So one solution is you go for decentralization and you say, boss, everyone take individual connections. If everyone takes individual connections, your fixed cost of connection goes up because everyone has to maintain a meter reading as required. So your fixed cost goes up. So your cost structure goes up. That doesn't support business. So generally what businesses do is they say, okay, what I will do is I will take one connection and I will put meter at everyone's house. One bill will come from will come to me for the entire complex, and based on your usage, I will debit that much amount to each one of you. Now, this is matrix structure. So, which one you should opt? That will depend upon what kind of circumstances you are dealing with. If you're a big organization trying to bring everyone under one umbrella, Tata Group, when I was working with the Tata Group and Mr. Ratan Tata took over, he was trying to do the same thing. Everyone has to follow Tata Code of Conduct. So that was the effort of centralizing or creating a matrix structure. You guys are decentralized. Every company is working in a different manner. Now come under one umbrella. There is something which everyone has to follow. TBEM, Tata Code of Conduct, everyone has to follow, and you can run independently the way you are running. That was matrix structure. They went from a decentralized structure to a matrix structure. Most of the organizations don't have a need for going to a hybrid structure or a matrix structure from a centralized structure because your operation is not that complex. One single business, generally in one location or maybe couple of locations. So you are sorted in those kind of cases. You don't need to create complexity of hybrid or decentralization. You can run well with centralized structure.
I think very beautifully you have explained with the example what are the challenges there in centralized HR structure model and in the decentralized HR structure model. Seema, if you are having centralized, decentralized, or the hybrid, most obvious. So, what do you see? Is there any also challenges for the HR leaders when you opt centralized or opt the hybrid this structure?
Before I answer your question, I think I'll build on what Harjeet is saying. Let me now give you a few more examples to make it more understandable at the ground level. So let's say compensation and benefit policy, or my, let's say, car policy, for instance. So that is like centralized. Now, what is decentralized is everybody will get 12 number of leads in a year. I'm talking about multi-location. Now, location could be in any state, and each region, each state has their own culture and festivals and all. So as long as they have 12 leaves across India, now they have flexibility whether they have it on Janmashtami or they have it on Dahi Handi or they have it on Ganesh Chaturthi. I'm just giving you further example coming from my work. I'm talking again, giving you Mahindra's context. So being a large multi-locational, multi-dimensional, multi-industrial industries, at the same time being not so prescriptive, So there needs to be a difference between prescriptive and descriptive when we come to centralize and decentralize. So for example, today's example I'm giving you, my team member approached me that Diwali is just next door. So we need to now plan for the Diwali gifts for employees. So do we do it at central level or let locations decide? So I said, we have the budget. We have per employee budget. Give them their budget and let them select what they want according to their local needs, So this is going back to Harjeet's example, that small plant under a big tree, you're supporting, you're nurturing, but at the same time, you're giving space for the local plant to really flourish. So now coming back to the challenge, Ramesh, the question you asked me, I think both have challenges, whether or rather three: hybrid, central, and decentral. Central would be, it's more controlling, command and controlling. That, mentality gets into people's mind. I mean, exceptions are always there, but then we need to keep a watch how it is being handled and monitored. Now, when it comes to decentralized, a lot of flexibility also leads to a lot of delusion, in my view. So again, when you give flexibility comes with responsibility.
Harjeet, would like to add here anything as HR challenges for all the three models?
I will not call it challenges. It is a situation or your business strategy. Now, if you see, let's discuss two organizations which look very similar, Apple and Google. They are from outside, you see, both are Silicon Valley companies, and in both are tech companies, and both are well respected across the globe. But these two companies are very different in their approach. Google is decentralized, means whatever they do, they believe in decentralization. And Apple is highly centralized. Highly centralized means you can't take a decision without involving the top management. If you see owners of Google, in total, they have 27 patents in their name. And the owner of Apple, and this guy had more than 300 patents in past 10 years itself in his name. Because every patent has to go through him. Now, we might say, oh, this guy was controlling. No, it is not about control. It is about the business strategy. If you see Google, if they have to select a color, they put the color on the website and they ask people, you select which color you like. Or they don't even ask, whichever color people are clicking more, they select that color. Whereas in Apple, if they have to pick a color, it will be the top management which will pick the color because they believe they are going to give something to the customer which customer can't even imagine of. They have that much sense of pride and that much sense of aesthetics. They bring the best aesthetics people in the world to design the product. And look, Google has started from a software company and became a hardware company, whereas Apple has started from a hardware company and became a software company. So the journey which Apple had, their product is very costly. People will not forgive them if they make a single mistake. So for them, centralization and some surprise is something which is very, very important. So they can't discuss their products outside. They have to be very secretive about their products. Whereas Google, everyone who comes into Google has access to the entire Google code. Because that is how they have built the culture and that is what the demand of their work is. So whatever your strategic need is, based on that, based on the philosophy of your organization, you decide whether you want to go for centralization or decentralization. Or like I said, if you're acquiring a company or if you're trying to consolidate, so these are the decisions which you take at that point in time. As far as this particular thing you were talking about, that which function should stay in and which function should go out. So see, McDonald is a very good example. McDonald, they design their product themselves and then they give franchisee. So HR is also same. Like she was talking about that comp and ben we do. So at the central place, you do org design, you do strategy, you define compliance, you define vision, mission, values, you define your data structure, comp and ben, technology. And then what you do is you say, now look, this is what the structure is. Now I'm giving franchisee. you can put it in 10 locations and you can scale fast. And that is how McDonald's is able to operate in multiple locations. So if you have a multi-location strategy, then hybrid structure makes perfect sense. And how HR pans out in that is, if you are a centralized HR, everyone is a generalist. Because everyone generally do everything, everyone is supposed to know everything. But when you work with, say, a hybrid structure, in hybrid structure, what you need is, you need certain specialists. That for comp and ben, you need a specialist. For technology, you need a specialist. And the people who work in the matrix, this is like an octopus. The brain is there, and then you have tentacles. So you can have as many tentacles, but tentacle is something which is a generalist HR, and brain sits as a specialist HR. So that's how the structure becomes different in a matrix organization. And in centralized and decentralized models, it is generally a generalist role. The difference between, say, centralized and decentralized is, in centralized, it is HR domain knowledge is strong.
Let me ask you one more question that is related to this. What would you like to see as a competencies when you're hiring any new HR guy in your team, when you have the centralized HR structure or decentralized hybrid?
Look, frankly speaking, nowadays, the way things are going, data analytics, if you are thinking of decentralized structure, not decentralized structure, if you're thinking of a hybrid structure, if you're thinking of moving from a centralized structure to hybrid structure because you're expanding, in that case, you need to look at data analytics, you need to look at change management, strategic thinking, adaptability. These things will become very, very important. But actually, let me tell you a story. So somebody went to Panditji and asked Panditji, Havan karana. The Panditji said, okay, tell me for what you want to do Havan. The guy said, अरे एक specific बेटी के लिए हवन कराना. He said, बेटी के लिए क्या? बेटी की शादी नहीं हो रही है. Your daughter is not getting married. He said, no, no, no. Her DP is not getting likes. Now, frankly speaking, there is no mantra as of now in any Shastra which helps you getting more likes on DP. But still, what Panditji did was, Panditji conducted Havan. We HR guys are like Panditji. So whatever is the need of the organization, based on that, we suggest whether this is what you should be doing or that is what you should be doing, whether a structure should be centralized or decentralized. So adaptability is one thing which is very, very important as a competency for the HR guys, the way I see it.
Seema,
So
what
become that
would be your
completely.
final and concluding remarks?
I think Harjeet covered all of them. I agree. And I was also thinking that adaptability is one, especially the post-pandemic, how we, adapted, and that was a good example. And also, I think empathy is another one which we need to build on. I see that not so much with HR professionals. The new generation I'm talking about, the empathy part, the softer part has to be there. And of course, on the business front, data analytics, as he covered, and more understanding of business. I think understanding of business is equally important. Without knowing the disease, you can't advise like a doctor, right? Or like that Panditji, what example Harjeet was saying. You need to know the reason, the problem, or the problem statement. So that you need to be. Yeah.
I think still we have 1 or 2 minutes. Would you like to conclude this?
All the 3 types of structures, they are like clothes in your closet. So it is like when it is cold, you want to wear a coat, and when it is hot, you want to wear a t-shirt. Same way, it depends upon what your organization is going through. Based on that, you decide which structure you need to adopt. If you're a small organization, start with centralization. If you are into acquisition mode, then go for decentralization. If you are consolidating big businesses together, then go for hybrid structure. This is how broadly I would define or sum up the discussion.
Right. Thank you so much, Seema and Harjeet, for joining the conversation and sharing your wonderful thoughts. Thank you so much.